9. Too close for comfort. Homecoming at Miami this year had a totally different significance for me. I had conquered my battle with Gwen's father, and that gave me the confidence to normalize our relationship with more frequent visits. Gone was the talk about her being a graduate student and I still to graduate. Our debates were more on which movies to view and which restaurants to patronize. My academics were very strong. After registering all A's in my midterm exams, I was informed by the Dean of Student Affairs that I was in the running to be named as valedictorian for the upcoming commencement exercise at the end of this academic year. I shared this invitation with my dad only, so as not to have to respond to any questions coming from unofficial corners. Social life was also improving. I started to pay more attention to the Miami Black Students Action Committee, which was the organization of black students on the campus. Besides organizing performances by national black artists, the committee had decided to promote campus research that would contribute to a better understanding of the history of black students at Miami. At one of our meetings, we had a presentation of archival work being done on documenting the history of African Americans at Miami University. This was being undertaken by a history professor who had assembled a team of interested students to assemble newspaper articles, photographs, and other media material that were available in the Miami University archives. This digital collection included about 268 items covering the period between 1868 and 2014. In the question and answer period of his lecture, one of the students asked him if the black students at Miami University played any significant role in the student protests in the late 1960s against the Vietnam War. We knew about Kent State University and the death of a student there. But what did Miami students do? And more to the point, what did the black students at Miami University do? In passing, he mentioned that a dean had informed him that there was someone on the faculty who was a student here at that time. Michael turned to me and said, "Is he talking about your dad?" "I think so." Then, without any permission, Michael just got up and said, "Yes, that must be Eric's dad." The professor looked stunned and said something to the effect that we should make arrangements for him to talk to us about his experiences during that time. As he would emphasize, when you have first-hand information, use it. I was volunteered by Michael to be the point person in making the necessary arrangements. To my surprise, Dad was keen on doing this. I wondered about that because, for all the time I have spent with him, I have never heard him mention anything about how things were at Miami during that period of widespread student unrest in the USA. In setting up this arrangement, I thought I could use this event to bring Gwen into the companion of the majority of black students on the campus. There was no comparative group among the graduate students. In fact, no one knew how many of Miami's graduate population were African Americans. Gwen did not mind this. She just loved to listen to Dad speaking in what she called his sing-song Caribbean accent. The second surprise came at the opening of the event, when the chairman of the committee asked me to introduce my dad to the audience. Well, I made an error for which I was to become gravely regretful. Instead of speaking about his accolades, I ended up speaking about his character and how I came to refer to him as my dad. The error I made was that I was so intent on showing his humanity and generosity towards me, I got lost in expounding a history of events which may have come off as more about my misfortunes as a homeless student than the magnanimity of my new parental figure. Michael, sitting in the front row, signaled me to cut short my introduction, which I did, to an arousing cheer for Professor Willis, visiting professor and Miami alumnus. As Michael would tell the story, although he sat there in the front row next to Gwen, listening to that speech, his eyes were more fixated on me sitting at the end of the head table. Somehow, and I cannot explain it, he seemed to have sensed that something was wrong when I just sat and periodically kept placing both palms of my hands over my face as if in deep thought. Actually, I was trying to do my best at wiping tears from my eyes every few minutes. Turning to Gwen, he said, "You stay here. I think something is going wrong with Eric." Michael quietly exited the meeting hall and came around to the back of the stage. Taking a piece of paper from one of the stagehands, he wrote a message and told him to go and immediately give this note to Eric, sitting at the end of the table. I remember reading this note handed to me, and it said, "Follow this guy and come off the stage now." I got up and went right into the arms of Michael. "What is the matter, bro?" he said, hugging me as tightly as he could. "I don't know, man. I am having trouble breathing and I can't stop crying. You think you can take me to the hospital now? Where are the car keys? Let's go." I started asking him what about Gwen and how is Dad going to get back home. "Forget about them. We will take care of them. Right now, Eric, you have to try to stay calm and breathe deeply." Michael is a very impressionable black man. 6'2", well-built with an all-season smile that made everyone anxious to work with him. Unknown to me, he had already assigned someone to make sure that Gwen got home, that Dad was dropped off at the apartment, and for someone to call the emergency ward to tell them that we were on our way. Fortunately for me, Dr. Ahamadinn was slowly walking past the reception desk when a nurse said, "Doctor, I think they are bringing in one of your patients into emergency." "Who?" "Isn't Eric Johnston your patient?" "Yes, what's wrong?" "Tell them to take him immediately to room 112A. I'll be right there." I wasn't in that room for more than 1 minute when the goodly doctor arrived. He started consulting with the nurses who were taking my vital statistics. He mentioned something to them and then, turning to me, he said, "Eric, I'm going to give you an injection which should stabilize your breathing and allow you to calm down a bit. When you are stable, we will talk. Take him upstairs and find a room for observation." I could hear him shouting. "He shouldn't be here for more than 3 hours." Meanwhile, the lecture session had been abruptly curtailed on the excuse that the professor was running late for his next appointment. "Sorry to do this to you, sir, but we have to inform you that Eric was just rushed to the emergency hospital." "Really? What happened?" Giving our guest speaker his phone, the student, who had called the abrupt end to the session, said, "I think his friend Michael is on my phone, sir. I think you should talk to him." Michael explained to Dad that I seemed to have had an anxiety attack. The doctors said that I was showing all of the classic signs of severity of the attack: increased heart rate, breathing rapidly, hyperventilation, and having trouble concentrating or expressing myself. Anyhow, Michael assured Dad that Dr. Ahamadinn was attending to me and said that I should be fine within the next 2 hours. Of course, Dad wanted to come to the emergency ward right away. That was the same reaction coming from Gwen when she got the news. But Michael was at pains to explain that it would serve no useful purpose for anyone to come to see me now, because, as he understood it, I had not been admitted to a ward where visiting is allowed, but only being held for observation. Just then, Gwen's phone rang. Michael had slipped my phone into my hand as I was being wheeled to the observation room, so I was able to call her. I told her that I was not sure what had caused this, but that I would feel more comfortable if I were talking to her in the safety of her home. I did my best to convince her to get home and immediately call my number. I will explain to her what has happened. In the second hour of my observation, the doctor began to query me to find out what could have triggered this attack. He concluded that it must have been my speech about my dad, which brought the trauma of being homeless back into my consciousness. You have to learn how to speak about this matter and not give yourself an anxiety attack. I could arrange some trauma therapy for you if you wish. Not now, Doc. I just want to be cleared to return to my home and talk with my babes and my dad. Okay, just one more hour of observation, just to be sure that you have really stabilized. Now, my bout with the anxiety attack did not have any lasting physical effect on me. However, it really started to strain my relationships, as those closest to me just kept a constant watch, as if this event could reoccur at any moment. Gwen and I would be having a very cozy time when she would, out of the blue, say something like, "Are you okay?" She really did not know how that question would throw me off my game, because I knew exactly what she was referring to. I could put up with a question from Gwen. Well, I had to, just to keep our relationship on keel. But Michael was another game. Every time this guy saw me, he would say, "Are you feeling okay? Because for a moment, I thought you didn't look that well." It got so bad that I started to respond by telling him that he didn't look that well to me either. So maybe we both needed to have our eyes checked. However, one inquisitor that really threw me for a spin was my goodly doctor. About a week after my brief sojourn in the emergency ward, my dear Dr. Ahamadinn called me on the phone and invited me to have dinner with him downtown. I immediately thought that this would be another inquiry about me giving some serious thought to the therapy sessions that he had recommended. I was wrong by a mile. We went to dinner at the Fanshin Chinese restaurant in Oxford. There are about 4 high-priced eateries serving Chinese cuisine in town. We sat down to dinner, and I noticed the conversation was not coming around to the therapy suggestion. Zaki, as he insisted I call him, and not doctor, was speaking about growing up as a youth in Pakistan and how he had a crush on a friend in his high school. He was very remorseful. Because of the culture, he could not make his affection known before his friend passed away. Then Zaki dropped his bombshell. "Could you and I become close friends?" Well, I already felt uncomfortable in his presence. But was Zaki looking for a relationship with me? I was stunned, and I said, Well, Zaki, I already have a girlfriend. Oh, I'm so sorry, I did not know that. Every time you came to the hospital, you were always accompanied by your friend Michael, and I just thought that maybe I should give it a try. The dinner conversation became awkward from that point. Zaki just kept on apologizing profusely, even though I told him it was okay, I was not offended. We got into the car as he dropped me back to the apartment. As we pulled up, I said, Zaki, will you do me a favor? Sure, Eric, what is it? Would you continue to be my doctor? Oh, he was enthusiastic about that. Anytime that you have a health problem, just tell whoever is with you to call Dr. Din. That is how they refer to me in the ward. And now, can I do you a favor? Sure. What is that? Close your eyes. And as he did so, I pulled him towards me and landed one passionate kiss on his lips. When I had pulled away, he was starting to cry. So as not to send a wrong message, I jumped out of the car and said, Zaki, you drive safely home now, and walked into my flat. When I told Michael what had happened, he freaked out. Why the fuck did you do such a crazy thing? This guy must be thinking that you have a crush on him. Nah, my grandma always said that if you can do something to make someone happy, do it at least once.